Today I'm going to show you how I make the columns for each side of the cabinet. I start by gluing up 3 pieces of 8-quarter cherry into blocks big enough to make columns. And since I still don't have a joiner, I use the router sled to put one flat face on both the columns. After this is done, I can use my planer to get them square. Now, similar to the last video, to make the curve, I mark discrete offsets for the curve at regular lengths and then just connect them to make a curve. But for the columns, I'm actually able to cut them directly on the bandsaw instead of making a router sled track with curves, but it is a really slow cut. Then I smooth things out with the hand plane and sander. This will make sense later, but I paint the curved faces red. Don't worry, no red paint will be visible in the final piece of furniture. Now the next step is to cut these into blocks. My miter saw was almost big enough to cut the deepest cuts. Now this is where the curve is least concave. So for a couple cuts I had to finish the cut by hand and then just sand the edge smooth. But for most of them, the miter saw made it all the way through. So these are chopped up into 11 pieces each. Before I go any further with this, I need to seal the ends. Otherwise it's going to start checking in the dry Denver heat, and for that I'm using Anchor Seal 2. I found this product works well. Link in my Amazon store in the description. Now to drill some end grain. This was not fun. I had to buy a better Fastener bit. The cheap one I had was just vibrating too much, and I had to rig all that stuff up and clamp the workpiece in place. It was way too unstable to hold by hand. And this larger diameter hole accommodates the shoulder of the bushing and just leaves it sticking out enough that it'll create the spacing I want between the drawers. Now I cut the dados that'll hold the darker wood that holds the columns to the drawers. And I have some material that I'm just going to turn away, and I can use that to get the fence in the right position to have the dado exactly where I want it. And I always try to make sure the camera is out of focus for the final and most important shot. I drill and tap some holes that'll be used for the joinery to the drawer. Usually tapping by hand is straight enough, but I was a little nervous that a couple degrees would throw me off, so I use that perpendicular drilling rig to really get it right. And this sacrificial piece of material will keep those dado edges crisp when I turn it. And knocking off the corners at the bandsaw saves me some time on the lathe. And now it's time to turn it. I use some discs in the chuck so that the blank rotates around the holes that I drilled. And since the holes are the same space from the flat side, if I carefully turn down so that I remove all of the red paint but no more, then that curve that I bandsawed into the columns will be translated all the way around to the circular columns, and I'll have the curve that I want. Now I can knock that piece of sacrificial material out. And one of 22 of these is done. I know at the end of the last video I said I was 5% done with this project. I don't think that was true then. Maybe it's true now. And if you made it this far, a little engineering challenge. So relying on perfect dimensions to get these drawers where I want them is probably not going to be realistic given my tools and my skills and abilities, I guess. So I need fine adjustments for kind of a tilting angle, that middle picture, and then the far picture, kind of a sagging off the column angle. I need to be able to tweak and adjust those once I get everything together. And I have a thought on how to do this, but I'd be curious if you have any comments about how you would tackle this. And if you want some hints as to what I'm planning, you can check out my Instagram. Otherwise, that's all for now.